This is Empowered Human Academy. Welcome home.
I realize anytime that my mind comes up with, oh, you can't do it, or it's not going to work, or the evidence shows it's not going to happen, I can go back to those moments in life and say, yeah, I've been there before. I felt that. And then I move through it.
This is about love. This is about light. This is about the idea that you have everything you will ever need.
And this life of yours, this is where you grow, you expand, and you remember who you really are.
I'm Abe.
I'm Isaac.
In Empowered Human Academy, we join with humans of all kinds to feel the inspiration that can only come with empowered living.
The stories you hear today are unique, but the energy you hear today belongs to you too. So, with hearts wide open, let's begin.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Empowered Human Academy. Today we have our good friend Teresa Huggins, and we are so excited for this conversation. We're just going to dive right in. Teresa, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
It's great to be with both of you. So it's exciting that technology connects us.
Right. I completely agree. There are a lot of blessings about the current moment, and I'm grateful for this, especially during the pandemic. So to open up the conversation, I want to ask who you are, and I want to put a specific angle on this, right? Like, not like you're introducing yourself to somebody, not like you're at an event, not like you're writing a book even, just when you come home to yourself, what words of identity do you choose for who you are on the inside?
Intuitive, always learning, awake, and optimistic.
Cool. How do those words play into, like, let's just talk about your last week, maybe. Tell me how those words come home in your lived experience.
So with life, and we can plan all we want, right? And I think 2020 has taught us that.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's adjusting and adapting to whatever shows up. So I wasn't always this way, but I can feel which direction to go into, or how to shift, or feel triggered. And then what do I do with that? Because it's my feeling, so I'm going to own it. And so within a week, I may dance with all those feelings. And so being able to be present with myself allows me to be awake to other people and what's possible.
Yeah, cool. Can you tell me about learning this? You said you weren't always like this. How did you come into that knowledge?
I was actually the shy student in class that my leg would shake if the teacher looked at me to call on. So a lot of what I learned is through my friend Jack Canfield. He's the creator of Chicken Soup for the Soul books and Success Principles. And going to his trainings and workshops, I've learned a lot of different things. And then from the people I met there, and over life, I've always worked with people and lots of people. And so with every interaction, that's where I've been able to learn and grow and learn different people's perspectives.
Mm-hmm. And we met when I was 15 years old at a leadership camp, and you're the director and creator of that. And since then, we've worked together well into my 20s, both personally and professionally. And I want to kind of dive into that experience real quick. Can you share a little bit about, the programs that you put on and what has inspired you to do that over the years?
Mm-hmm. So my first part of my career was in the public schools as a teacher and a counselor. And then I graduated into my dreams, is how I like to phrase it, after 21 years. What's that?
I love that.
Yeah. And it was a dream. It was something that was gnawing at me. It was that thought of you want to create this. And I literally took a blank piece of paper and a notebook. Well, what would it look like? Well, I want to create leaders for life. I believe everybody's a leader and it looks different. And what would that look like? And I had done, since college, I'd been in leadership programs and worked at summer programs and leadership conferences and spoke at conferences. And there was just, over a period of time, it was a desire to take that leap of faith and create something new. And so in any of my programs, whether it's with youth or adults or corporations, it's always about where are we now and where do we want to go? And how do we get there? And a lot of it has to do with the shift of the mindset, seeing something different, looking through the lens of the other person or the group of people. And it evolves. Like, I didn't know I would be doing these things. Actually, if I knew what I should have known to become an entrepreneur, I probably wouldn't have. But I went with it and I followed it, and it's molded into all different kind of programs. Here I live in Clinton, New York with Hamilton College, and Abe, when I met you in 2005, You were very enthusiastic, as you are now. And that was it. I was going to do a one take, do it once, right?
Oh, wow.
And how long? 15 years later, and representation. We've done them in both Colorado and New York, and I run women's retreats and renewal programs in many different states. That wasn't in the original version, and I think I invite people to consider what your heart guides you to do, and it's going to evolve, it's going to mold, it's going to change, and to pay attention to that, and that's okay. That it doesn't have to be like the first dream that you wrote down as a possibility.
Were there times over the course of the years, after that first camp where you were like, oh, I can do this? What kind of thoughts in your mind shifted to then go on to do many years of this program for teens across the country and the world?
What shifted? Seeing the results that happen, seeing young people come in on a Sunday and be totally different by Friday when they left. And then really analyzing that, and how did we do that, and what happened, and what was that magical moment where they shifted and redefined who they are and who they could be. And many of the young people still are in contact and connected. And so I look at that, and I can even go back to, with the social media opportunities, some of my first students, when I was the 22-year-old teacher and they were 18, we're still in contact. And what they remember has nothing to do with the content. It has to do with the connection, the heart connection that they felt. And they still feel, even though we haven't seen each other in probably 40 years or so.
Wow.
And that's what I long for. That's what I get excited about.
I get excited about that too. I think I get most excited to see transformation and aha moments, like we call them, on a micro level and a macro level. And you talked about seeing students come in on Sunday and being changed on Friday. What have you learned are some of the kind of components that go into creating that magic where people can really be changed? I mean, not just at leadership camp, but you said you've done a lot of, Jack Canfield trainings and stuff. Like, what's the recipe for allowing and creating space for people to receive and tap into their truth?
The recipe for people supporting other people is to have an open heart, to let go of preconceived expectations, to hold the highest expectation. And even if I'm an individual wanting to shift and grow, it's really important to stay open that there is so much more out there than we realize, and to pay attention when something shows up, when something comes in your path that you feel that right inside. You feel like, why am I noticing that billboard, or why am I listening to that commercial? And then asking yourself that and recording it and noting it. For people that want to work in the transformational field, it's really important to be clear in yourself. Like, if you want to help other people, you want to coach, you want to work with people, you want to staff in a program, it's really important to do your own work too before you go and serve other people, so that you have that clarity in your heart and soul to be of service, to be a vessel for them. And what I found over all the programs, doing things in all the modalities, because people learn in different ways. So in any of my programs, they're very active. You sit for very little time, really. You're with a partner, you're with a small group, you're up moving, you're writing. And that's what I think is the magic, because it taps into all the modalities, the learning styles that we have.
And I think, I've always looked up to you as a teacher and a mentor, and you've seen me through a lot of different phases in my life. And that's why I'm so excited to chat with you today. I'm going back to the word magic. And I think a lot of people, especially this year, are feeling what it feels like to sit with themselves or have to reconcile some things in their life that they might have not noticed before, because, they were kind of piling other things upon it. And what I love about the things that you create is you create this really beautiful space where, at these leadership camps, there are these students who literally, I remember one time there was this shy kid that came, a kid who was shy, and his parents were like, hey, we expect a call from you on Tuesday because we know that he's not going to make it past then. And he was the one that gave the end of the week speech. And that gives me chills. It almost makes me cry every time, because he spoke in front of all the parents, all the camp, about his experience. And you have this beautiful a way of creating this magical moment. I want to talk a little bit about, I want to give the listeners an opportunity to kind of be transported into these programs that you create for a second. And during the week of these programs, at the end of the week, we do a thing called the Dream Walk. And I think that's a really, really beautiful experience that always like kind of transforms people's like experience. And you talk about these messages and the experience hitting your subconscious. And that's why it's like really powerful. Can you share a little bit about that? Maybe the psychology behind it, the I don't know, about it in general. Like, I think I want to touch on that magic for a bit.
Okay. What Abe's referring to is there are ways in which sometimes we think we're all just having a thought and that these thoughts just continue, but actually there's all kinds of, it's like that magic soup inside of us. Why maybe something I hear or see may touch my heart, but it may not for you. It might not be connected. Mm-hmm. And that's a subconscious mind. And so all of our life experiences builds up upon that. And so we could hear a song and it can trigger a memory. We could have a feeling and it stays with us. And the activity of the Dream Walk is something that is done at the end of the week to anchor. It's like when you listen to beautiful music and you feel it, the vibration the next morning you wake up or you watch a beautiful movie and that message stays with you. Mm. And when humans connect heart to heart and they let go of their own judgments and the judgments of one another, I believe that when they whisper a message to someone, that actually gets anchored in the cellular level. And that's where I've learned a lot with health and wellness is that it's so important, the messages we tell ourselves. And I think as a default, we go to the negative or we go to the challenges. And in 2020, people have experienced all kinds of things. I remember I was at a corporate leadership training on March 10th. It was just starting New York City. I live about 5 hours from New York City. And it was pretty serious in New York City. And so I did this activity. What would happen if it came to our area? What if the virus came into your work? And we did this experiential activity. But to be honest, we were kind of imagining that it would never happen. Like it would never be here. Like our country wouldn't shut down, right? That's March 10th, and March 15th is when the contracts started changing in my world, right? Mm-hmm. And companies and banks went to work from home that's never been imagined before. And in that whole journey, what I was teaching the the corporate leaders was that it's not the events outside of us, it's what we do with them. How do we look at it? I view 2020 as a year of resilience and adaptability and joy. Were there frustrations? Absolutely. Are there things that have gone haywire? Yes, in my own life and the lives of others. But I don't live there. I feel the feelings and I move through them. I ask myself, just the other night, I asked my husband, Bill, what do we really believe about staying healthy and the COVID virus? And let's really talk about it and ground with our beliefs, like a tree, right? Having roots. Like, what do I believe as I walk through the world? Not what the media tells me or other people, but what do I believe and how can I stay healthy and well? And in all of the work with Leaders for Life International, that's what I believe we did, is they didn't just come for a week or a weekend. Mm-hmm. It gets anchored in the body and a lot of the different activities that we do, even the way that you bring awareness into your body, the way you use your imagination. We do a lot of things with guided imagery, with knowing how to do a handshake and talk to people. Like that's something that how to connect really heart to heart. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think it stays more than just being a thought in the mind.
Well, and all of those things have stayed with me up until now. I mean, my life was radically changed because of those subconscious things that were during such a formative time in your life. I mean, humans in their teens are really, that's their formative times of learning about what the world was like. And what I love about the work that you've done is I feel like you create this space to imagine what the world can be like and what, to not accept negativity or pessimism as the option. That is the only option to live. So, thank you for that.
Yeah. And I'll just add, there are different vibrations that our body feels. And so negativity, fear, pessimism, it's a lower vibration and it actually affects our immune system. And so that's why it's really important for people to have a conversation with themselves and a conversation with their family, friends. How can we get stronger as a culture, as a society? And I think that's some of the gifts in how I look at 2020. It's a time for us to really come back to gratitude and appreciation and freedom and all of that. Not that it's taken away or it's changed, but rather what's really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
What do I really value? And then how do we create a new world that way?
Mm-hmm. Create a new world. I love that concept. And going back to earlier, like when you wrote down from scratch the dream that you had, that thing that you would make, I find that really compelling, especially right now when so many of the norms that we've all run with for the last 10 years or however many years have been upended. How do we, so for those of us listening who don't have, at this exact moment, the luxury of going to a physical camp where we can engage with, different like physical activities and whatnot. And for those of us who are maybe quarantining at home, how do we interface with like all the levels of our existence, and how do we begin to do that work of engaging with our subconscious and like drilling in that positivity into all the layers of who we are?
Mm-hmm. Well, listening to your podcast would be a good idea.
Thank you so much. That is kind of the point.
And I really do believe that. Listening to messages, watching uplifting, having conversations. You can do it via Zoom and via FaceTime and phone call, and really being intentional, not just being that someone won't listen. It's changing the story. So I would go to these international conferences and I'd work at the events, and then I would fly home and I'd think, where are the people around here? And until I changed the story to where are the people here and what can we do? Then it shifted. Then I met people. Then I saw people. Then I ran into, hey, have you listened to this or watched that? And then all of a sudden we had all kinds of opportunities. So when we hold the story that there's nothing here, it's never going to work, or world's falling apart, you're going to be with people like that. So that's where you start and changing and being open to new possibilities.
Wow. That's cool. Okay, so tell me about changing the story for you, like in this last chapter of time. Where has that been something that's been like particularly powerful for you?
Well, I have a medical diagnosis named cancer, and I changed the story from the moment that someone said I might have that. Now, part of my professional and personal life has been to help people with that. So I had a foundation. I understood what people went through. But until you go through it in your body, so I've learned it's really important to self-advocate and to change the story. And I love planting seeds with the medical community and saying, well, what if that's not true? Or what if my body's not going to do that? Or what if, and they look, now you see them just with the mask, right? So you have to feel their heart, because all you see is the eyes. And it's asking those questions and considering it and affirming it all the time. Even when your body or your mind or your heart hurt, it's saying, for me, I say all the time, I'm vibrantly healthy. I breathe in health and wellness into my body. And then there's this little gremlin in the mind, right, that says, no, you're not. You have a diagnosis. No, you're not. You have to be sick. Or no, you're not. You have to go, right? And so I welcome it. I have a conversation with it, and then I say, you can leave now. And sometimes it takes a few times to kick that thought out of the mind, right? So for anyone that's new with this, it's giving yourself permission to just start somewhere. And it might start from writing a list. Like anytime I prepare a program, I think of all the things that might go wrong, not for the purpose of seeing the challenges, but rather solving them. So what might go wrong? And Abe, you don't know because you were a student coming in 2005, but when you do a program for the first time, you're thinking of all the details, and I was right on. I never thought about thunderstorms in North Dakota and Illinois that would mean for when the college students came in to help work, instead of 3 trips to the airport, I think we had 20.
Wow.
Wow.
So that's an example of, in that moment, I'm sure stress was in my mind and my spirit.
Hmm.
But now I look back at it and I thought, there's a great example of something I didn't think of, but I still stayed focused on the dream.
Hmm.
And same thing when you have a job change or you have a, a diagnosis or someone moves away or all of those things, we still can be aligned with our spirit and our joy and our possibility, even when it hurts and it doesn't work.
I want to light on a specific word choice that I think you made. I want to know if it was intentional or if there was significance there. You said something like, stress was probably in my experience or in my mind. Most people would say I was probably stressed. And I want to know if your word choice there means something specific to you.
Yes, what I've learned is when you act as if your words are who you are, that's when it's harder to shift. So by saying I am stressed, anything that follows I am has a lot of subconscious power. And so I would recommend to people not to do that. I'm feeling stress. I'm triggered by this event. And so I do look at life as an experience, but it isn't who I am because we're always moving and changing. Think of nature. You've got, we had a snowstorm one day, a couple weeks ago, and the next day it went back up to 50. And that's really what life's all about. But what happens is we go over and over in our minds. We rehearse in our minds as if the story's real, but a story might have happened 5, 10 years ago or even longer. So I would invite people to think about life as experiences, but you are not that person who went through whatever it is that might be stressful for you.
Okay, that makes sense. So being careful about the I am statements that we have, and maybe like extending your point, maybe not to put words in your mouth, but substituting that with something that we do want to affirm as opposed to something that might drag us down.
Yes, exactly. So you would say, I'm excited about creating my new business. And your brain might say, you don't even have anything down on paper. And you say, well, I'm inviting in new images for my business, or I want this new partner in my life. And what happens is, think of it like advertising for the brain. Think of how advertisers do commercials. That's what they're doing. They're planting seeds of you wanting that product, but most commercials and advertisements have nothing to do with the product. They're planting the seeds in your subconscious so that when you go down the road and you see whatever the product is, oh, I need that, or I need to go there. So that's what we do with affirmations in our mind. I write them down, I create a vision board, I look at it, I imagine it as possible, and I act as if it can be. And when the doubt comes up, and it will, because that's part of the human nature, invite the doubt in like, oh, you want me to hold back? You don't think it's possible? Let's talk about it. So I like have these inner conversations, or what I enjoy is journaling or writing. And it was actually, I just found a journal from 2016 when I was first diagnosed. 4 days after I heard the words, you have cancer, I wrote, I'm on an empowered wellness journey. And I'm going to transform myself and the lives of others. And I did not know until last week when I found that journal that it was 4 days after. So I spent a little time. How could I have done that? Because usually you're in the shock. I was probably still in shock. And I live like that. So instead of seeing limitations like any of the teens that came through our program, and I just looked at it, I think 24 states and 8 countries. How did we do that? I never intentionally said I'm going to have these people from these states, but I kept affirming that I wanted to touch the world. And we did, with students all around the world coming. And so how that works is it's like you put a picture out there, you put an advertisement for your mind, and then stay open. It might come through another angle. It might come through another person. I remember writing down, I created a nonprofit to help fund sponsorships for students. And I made a list of who I was sure would donate. Their lives were changed and they'd be there. And the main donors had nothing to do with our program. They were people that when I shared the story and the passion and the outcomes, they're like, I want in, I want to help. Can my business sponsor people? And I was like, yes, you can. So think of it as life as being lots of options for getting on your path. Not just, I think sometimes people stay on the same road all the time. Come here, Roxy.
I
Roxy's hearing voices, and Roxy's my golden retriever, and she's uncertain. So,
All good.
So how has this shift in mindset / perspective focus helped you over the last 4 years with your experience?
yeah, so I follow an integrative approach, and what I have discovered for myself is it's physical healing, psychological, energetic, and spiritual. And then I started looking at all the things I'm writing, and I thought, well, that's how we should live. Like, that's how we should stay healthy. I think
just every day.
that when we're healthy, but we don't always talk like that. And so I know the reality from the scientific perspective, and I've learned a lot about anatomy and all of that. But, have I had days when I don't feel well and I'm laying on the couch and it's all I can do? Yes, I've had, and I've renamed everything. So radiation for me is healing rays. And I go in, and before I go in, and I tell the practitioners that, and I said, okay, I'm here for my healing rays. They said, I don't like that other word. And so, and I'll meditate while I'm in a machine for a scan. And so what I've done is I didn't separate out from it. I weaved it into my life. So who I want to be before and right now is the same.
That's very cool. I was writing down notes about something completely different, but you stopped me in my tracks right there. Like to avoid disassociating from what one might call a negative experience, but instead weave it in a positive way. That's super interesting.
Yes, and I think it strengthens you. So I don't know for sure, but from the thousands of people I've worked with over my career, all of the kind of challenges, tragedies, and losses were pivotal moments in their life, and I think connected to the soul purpose. I don't have like research on it. I just have lots of lives. And whether it's adults or teens, what I see is when they can look at it as, instead of that happened to me and I was out of my control, to pull out all the strength they had and the ability to shift, the ability to learn and grow and to create a new identity. I think that's the power in the challenges of life.
I love that. Actively synthesizing something positively connected to your experience and your evolution, your expansion. That makes so much sense. I feel like this is connected to something you said way earlier in the conversation about how, like, if I had known everything that I should have known then about entrepreneurship, I probably wouldn't have succeeded.
Yes.
I'm taken by the idea that we might learn too many ways that something shouldn't work or wouldn't work, and that narrows down our perspective to what you said a minute ago. Like, we think of like the path in which something is possible, as opposed to we exist in a sea of possibilities and there are a million paths before us to anything that we can conceive of. That feels really significant. Talk to me about how somebody who's listening might begin to put that into effect in their own lives, right? This is a podcast about empowerment, and the stories that we hear are inspiring, but also, concrete details. Like, what can somebody use to begin to start to make that a habit? If it's a new thought that they have to focus on at first, how do we start to get that to a place where it's something that's more automatic, something that's more part of their perspective in life?
Yes. I think if there's an opportunity to go on a journey with a loved one or a friend, I think that strengthens it, or a small group of people.
Okay.
And if you're even doing it by yourself, I would start with, who am I today and this year, and write down all the things that were challenging, where my doubt came from, where my frustrations came from. And I would make a column that, what if it could be different? What if it could be different? And what would that look like? And then maybe another column, just playing with it. What is the new world going to look like? Because I think people will sometimes say, oh, okay, there you go again, Miss Optimism. I think our world's going to be much better. And I'm going to stick to it, right? Think of all the creativity and the solutions and all of the challenges that have shown up this year have always been here. And now they're kind of being brought to the surface and they're getting disassembled. And we get to design something different that we can do with that. And for a person that's just starting out, I think I would ask some people maybe if there's a friend that's read something or listened to a podcast or watched a video, because there are as many people that are influential and can be mentors as humans.
Hmm.
And you have to be aligned to what serves you, because what might get me excited may not, my husband might, he has a different learning style and a different processing, and what brings him joy might be a little bit different than mine. So we might approach it differently, but we can talk about it at the same time. He's an engineer. And when I was explaining what the Empowered Wellness Journey in my thoughts were, I use the example of how you build these beautiful structures in building. And how do they do it? And he says, well, we talk about it, and then an architect imagines it, and then a contractor builds it. And I said, it's the same thing. I said, I'm an architect for life, and I build from the inside out. And so I imagine it, and I ask questions, and how would that happen? And it's important to ask questions of people who are open to give you support, not tell you how it is. Because when I first started as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of people that want to tell you, this will go wrong, and that'll go wrong, and that's not going to work, and that on and on. And what it did to me is I stayed small. I stayed in a lane that I knew there was more to do, but I bought the story, is what I call it. So think about what kind of story you want to live by, and find people that relate to you in that way.
I remember talking to you, I think it was like 2014, and there was a moment I was like, how do I have so much energy in me, and I'm an optimist, and I believe in what's possible, because I mean, we spent a lot of time together for 8 years, right? And when you're in that space, that becomes what you believe in. And luckily I found someone who I can do that with every day. And it's this like, what's the life, what's the world that we're creating? What are the relationships that we are cultivating, and what are the stories that we are imagining for our life? But I would say there are a lot of people who it might not be normal for them, or they might not even have an idea on how to start, or like they feel a little silly doing it. There have been times in the past when I've had a thought in my mind where I'm like, don't be silly. Like, that's not how life works. Like, all this stuff. And I think that's one of my biggest passions as being a coach now, is like encouraging people and showing people that it is possible versus telling them all the ways that it can't. So I guess, what do you say to people in your trainings, in your personal life, that might be the naysayers, or maybe the people who want to believe, but they don't know how, because it hasn't been showcased to them in a way that, resonates with them?
Mm-hmm. I first want to, you used a strategy there I'm not sure you're aware of. You instead of saying but, you changed it to and. Mm-hmm. And that's important. Language is so important. Mm-hmm. And what I learned from Jack Canfield was the but negates. So you can have something positive in your sentence, and then you complete it. So the subconscious actually erases the positive, mm-hmm. or the affirming thought. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to add that. And then I first get individuals to share a story that they might have viewed as a challenge, to help them understand that they had a lot of strength in there. So it's really important, if you're in a group or you want to coach someone or support someone, to really listen to what they're saying, and it gives you clues. So if they're saying everything's out of control, there's nothing the same in 2020, nothing's going to happen, my business is falling apart, then I would say, tell me about your business. And I'd bring them to a point where they are aware, oh, yes, I felt like this before. I felt like a time when it wasn't taking off the way I thought. And then you build upon that. So think of it as like building a bridge between one person's heart and another person. That it's not, sometimes my friend just shared a problem, I got to help fix it. They want me to fix it. And I'd say, no, they don't. They probably want to hear and to listen. Sometimes asking a question for clarification will share. There was a woman that's coming to mind right now, and she was going through a divorce of which she didn't want. And her words were, I'm frozen. I can't even make a decision. So instead of working with her one-on-one in my office, I said, would you like to go for a walk? And so I took her in the woods where there's many paths at this location. And I told her ahead of time, I know where all the paths go, and I know how to get back to the car, but we're going to have a little conversation. And she was a little hesitant because she'd never been there. And we'd get to a juncture in the path, and she could go left or right. And I let her decide. And as I paid attention to what was happening in her body and her thoughts, I learned a lot about what was going on with her mind. And she gained a lot of strength from that. So it might look different for some people.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I love too the significance of telling her like the way back to the car is guaranteed. Like regardless of what path you choose, you can presume safety. You can presume that we'll make it to the other side of that choice. Why did you do that?
I could sense that she was very hesitant, and so to create safety for people is important. So I just intuitively sensed that she was uncertain where we were going.
So that totally makes sense. And Abe, you talk a lot about creating safety in your experience. I've seen you kind of talk about that perspective in your coaching clients. Why? I suppose I'm asking this a little bit from my own perspective where, like from the upbringing that I got and some of the messages that I ended up with, I've kind of come to celebrate existing in non-safety, or like I have to, there's a kind of honor, I suppose, in like putting up with the perception of danger or something like that. And yet you talk a lot about creating safety. Why is that?
Well,
is there a connection here?
I think it's what, Teresa, you were talking about, how it needs to land for people, and it needs to, and we also, the things that we listen to, that we watch, all of those have such a profound impact on our subconscious and the things that we believe about ourselves and the world. And I think sometimes, I don't know if you've seen this in your experience, Teresa, but a lot of people just kind of buy the point or belief that they have to struggle through life, or that it needs to be really hard, or that I need to like kill myself essentially, or like,
I think that's what I'm talking about.
Like kill myself for this badge of honor to like, oh, I did the hardest thing and therefore I am worthy, right? And I don't know, like, would you agree with that? Do you have any other insights?
Well, I do. I think that was part of my earlier years of living. You know, of course you get a graduate degree when you have a 2-year-old at home. Why not? While you're working full time. Okay. You know, that you've got to do more, be more, earn more. I think there's part of it is age-wise. I think there's different phases of life that's more important. Like, look what I achieved. I remember going to our 10th high school reunion, and it was all about, oh, I do this job, or I got this degree, or I won this award. And then at the 20th reunion, nobody was talking about, nobody really,
Interesting.
It wasn't there anymore. It wasn't important to say, look at me, what I've done. And yet when we're in it, when we're achieving, for the listeners that are in that, I want to get that promotion, or I want to get that new job. That's amazing. And that's great. As long as you take a moment to ask yourself, is this really what I want? I never wanted to be a school administrator, and I have almost a full graduate degree in that, because my administrators felt I'd make a good one. And somewhere in that journey with that program, my professor said, tell me what you want to do with this degree. And I was like, I probably don't want to have this degree. And then I probably want to be more in the counseling field. And so I switched majors for that. But I didn't ask myself in my 20s, like, what did I want? So for people that are starting out in their careers, it's really important to take time to, what do I value and what's important? Many people don't even know that. And then if you're an older person listening to this, what happens next is, well, my whole life has been my kids, mom and dad. I've been, and there for them. And then children go and become adults and go to college, and then they move away. And so what happens then with adults or people ending careers? Who am I now? How can I continue to grow and give back to society? So it's a whole life exploration of that. So how would I get there would be, I wouldn't just take action. As I look back in life, I probably wouldn't just take action, and I wouldn't let my fears, which are just imagined, take over. because again, going through, so one thing I did in 2020, going through boxes and journals, and I really wrote my vision in 1999 of what it would look like if I were to create something. I didn't take full action on it. I didn't leave my one career until 2005. And so that over that 6-year period, it was probably like a hum and a ho, and can I do it or not? Or, but I have the safety, people are like, you wouldn't leave. You'll get a good pension when you stay. And I didn't want to exchange a day of my life anymore. I wanted to really pursue it. And I knew I could always change. So if there's anyone listening that's like, you feel like this whisper of a dream within you, how can you create it? And it's small. For some people, it might start part-time. For some people, it might eventually mean I'm going to go for it. Mm-hmm. And the reality is you can always change. You don't have to stay with it.
Mm-hmm. That's something that that specific idea, a choice that we make is not permanent necessarily. Right. That came up a couple of weeks ago in a different episode. So it's interesting to hear it reiterated so soon. I want to ask, just transparently, here's the question. Why is what you want important?
What I personally want, or what a person
just in general, like
why is what I want?
The last couple of minutes of discussion have been so much about listening for the thing that you want and what your dream is and that sort of thing. And I guess by the same token, okay, I'm asking two questions in a row that come from negative past experiences. I was taught for a long time to ignore what I want. That is not the thing that I should be prioritizing. So tell me, why are you telling us to pay attention to what we want?
Mm-hmm. I think the more that people are authentic and aligned with what they're being guided to do, what they want, then our world will start shifting further. That's my opinion. Mm-hmm. I think that there's so many of us that are living out of I should, or I must do that. And we stay there, but we're not happy, or we're not settled by it. And so perhaps this year allows us to have all this tumbling and uncertainty for us to really go inside and ask, what do I want? Mm-hmm. Now, I do activities like I'll write it down. What do I want? You can do it with a partner where it's a repeated question. You say it over and over again. What do you want? Or who are you? And more comes up. But some of us grew up with, you're not supposed to want. I'm not supposed to want to travel around the world because that wouldn't be appropriate. I should do something else. And when we become clearer on what do I want, I intentionally look for joy every day. I don't think I always did that. I know I didn't, because I was so much in the doing that I never even saw what was going on around me. There's a story in my first book, Pausing Long Enough to Notice, which I actually wrote when I paused from writing something else. And there's a story about us going on a trip and seeing these beautiful trees, these bushes that were purple. And I came back, I took a picture of the tree in Virginia, I think, and I came back to New York and I asked a horticulturalist, a friend, and I said, can we put these in our yard, or can we grow them here? And he started laughing and he said, Teresa, they're all over town. You drive up and down the hill every day. They blossom for just a month. I never saw them. I never saw them because at that time in my life, I was working full time with 2 little kids. And as I'm driving, I'm either probably having a conversation with the toddler and the elementary student, or I was rehearsing my day. So I got to drop them off. When I drop them off, then I got to go to work. Then I got to do this and this and this. I was not present in my environment around me. And I feel that a lot of people live like that. And we don't know. I didn't know it until he brought that up. I'm like, there's no way they're here. And then I literally went for a drive and they're there.
Wow.
And so we miss so much. So there might be in a conversation, I met someone that was a simple conversation, probably 5 minutes or less, that ended up giving me multiple opportunities in his company to do corporate training. Now, I didn't go into that conference. I didn't even know he had this company. He felt something. He felt something in my presence and what I said, and it opened a new door. Mm-hmm. And so for people that are thinking, I don't even know where to start asking yourself, who do you want to be? And it can happen. Mm-hmm. And give yourself permission to go step by step. It's not like, don't compare yourself, all the like the big people around the world that like, that person's a celebrity. They all have the story of, it didn't work out. My job ended. My life was different. And from that challenge, they created the triumph. And that's a common factor with everybody. So I live with an awareness. I'm much more conscious of what my mind and body are doing. I'm aware when a thought comes to mind or a dream wakes me up. And for dreams, if they wake you up, jot them down or sketch them. You can keep your eyes closed and just speak them into your phone is another way to do it. And it might have significance for you at a later time.
That's really powerful. Where in your life, or what point in your life that you remember were you kind of like in awe, or what was like an aha moment that really changed your life in the last 10, 20 years?
An aha moment. Let's see. There's so many. So what's happening in my mind right now is like little flashes of pictures of people, you know, a young lady who didn't feel she was physically fit to climb a mountain, and her face came to me on top of a Colorado mountain. Wow. Or a person who didn't feel that they were significant in their lives, and they didn't realize that simple conversations changed them. For me, there was a friend that called me on it. In college, I lived in California for a summer with my aunt and uncle, and I watched paragliding. And I remember, this is back in the 1982, actually. And I was like, one day I'm going to do that. And then years later, maybe like 10 years ago, I was in Vail, Colorado, and there was an ad for it. And a friend said, I've always wanted to do it. And she said, well, call them. And I said, absolutely not. I am not like running off a mountain and paragliding with a stranger. And she said, oh, so you're out of integrity. Integrity is really important for me. And integrity means I show up, like who you're hearing now is probably who you hear wherever environment I'm in. Mm-hmm. I feel I'm pretty authentic that way. Mm-hmm. And so, but she called me on it. She said, oh, so tell everybody else to go for their dreams. Tell everybody else to let go of their fear. And I was like, all right. And I picked up the phone, and this gentleman answered, and he said, well, I'm really an accountant by trade, but my dad and I have this company, and I'm on a night audit. Is there any way you could stop by this hotel? So you can imagine what's going to come next. He names the hotel, which I'm staying upstairs.
Oh my
and
God.
He showed me the video, and in that moment, and his name was Steve, and he was so kind, and he explained, and that's what I did the next day. I jumped into the leap of faith, and I let go of my fear, and I wasn't going to do, even though I was paid and I was going to do it. And I met this woman, Marie, and she was in her late 60s, and she had a medical story of resilience and healing. And she decided she would do something extraordinary each year that she continued to live. And she was scared. And she said to me, Teresa, will you be my butterfly? Will you help me to fly? And I love butterflies and metaphor of butterfly. And so that moment I ran off a mountain, and I highly recommend it if anyone still hasn't done it. So
that's amazing.
Because what it was the story in my mind was, you're going to get hurt. You can't do it. It's not going to work. Whatever was up. I know it was more physical, like the fear of trusting this person, and the feeling, and it was an autumn day, and all the aspens were in bright yellow. And what that did for me on a physiological way, something left me and I felt like a butterfly flying high above. And as a result, I realized anytime that my mind comes up with, oh, you can't do it, or it's not going to work, or the evidence shows it's not going to happen, I can go back to those moments in life and say, yeah, I've been there before. I felt that. And then I move through it. So it's really important, I think, for everyone listening to know it's okay to feel all the feelings. Sometimes people say, oh, I was emotional, and they refer to it as tears. But I'd invite you to say the whole spectrum, from fear and that, that I have to cry because I'm so overwhelmed, to all the way up to love and joy. And that it's energy and motion. Emotions are really energy and motion. And when we can remember that, then that challenge or that pain doesn't stay within us. It can use to transform us.
I feel all of that really strongly. Also, hang gliding, parasailing, that's on my list too. So thank you for that encouragement. Kind
Well,
of
I'll
as a
have to
side
look
avenue.
up the company. You can go up the mountains. Abe's excited about doing it too.
Oh, he's
Oh,
absolutely
I'm
coming.
going to climb all the mountains too one day.
Absolutely. You may have just answered this question with that anecdote, but it's one of two questions that we close with, and it is, what does an empowered Teresa look like and feel like?
And an empowered Teresa is a woman who stays true to the vision that she can create, trusts her intuition, and continues to see that which some say is impossible. And she transformed the impossible into I am possible and I can create this outcome. And she walks her path with integrity and with her truth and trust and grounds and roots down into knowing that that is who I am now, and stay open to who I might be in the future.
How does that make you feel saying those words?
Well, I noticed I was wiggling. I was like, and it felt like it had to move through my body as I intuitively answered that question. And that's what's important to understand, that, one thing, if you're uncertain, press on your big toes, like anchor it down, root it down into the ground, into Mother Earth, and bring it back up into a new possibility and practice it over and over. I probably couldn't have said that in the past. And now I trust it.
The final question, what do you know for sure?
I know for sure that we as people are in a transformative phase of our global world, and that we can make a choice and we can strengthen who we are and learn to see beyond what others have seen before. That there is so much that's happening invisibly that when we open our hearts and our minds and we engage in uplifting conversations, and wisdom will flow and healing will happen and our world will grow into a better place. And I invite everyone to consider that if they could be who they want to be, to invite in what that answer might be for them.
I'm receiving that right now.
I'm grinning so hard my mouth hurts. Teresa, this has been an unqualified joy. Thank you.
Is there anything else before we end that you'd like to share? Anything? I mean, we could talk for hours, and we have talked for hours, but is there anything that you haven't said that wants to come out?
That we as humans have a capacity greater than we can imagine right now. And that the more that we as individuals connect with like-minded people, we create a wholeness for ourselves and for our world. And so I invite everybody just to start somewhere. Start somewhere where maybe you just acknowledge, like, wow, I was just triggered by that person's comment. What does that feel like? Where is it being stored in my body? Notice when you feel out of balance, when people impact you a certain way. For when we realize that we're 100% responsible for creating our life, life becomes more joyful, and that we can create more. And there will be people that come in your path and say, it's not possible. I had a doctor say, you need to put your life on hold. You're not taking this serious enough. And I said, thank you. And I sent her a poem using the words life on hold. and I sent it to her with gratitude for her helping me on my path, and that I could send this message to her. And that's how I'm putting my life on hold, which was not the same version as she might have, and being comfortable with that. Yeah. And so for each of us, just realize that while it feels kind of very unsettling this year in many ways, what would it take for you to be settled in the idea that there's a new light, a new birthing coming? And that's where I play.
Teresa, I love you. Thank you so much for your mind and your spirit and sharing your truth with us today. It's been a real joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for asking.
Bye.
Bye.
This podcast is the work of Lightward, our company, named for that toward the light direction which informs every single thing that we do, including money, which means, like everything else, the way we earn revenue is not based on industry norms. It's based on what feels deeply right and aligned by passing through the door that feels like it has more behind it, not less. And the way we keep this podcast going is all Lightward. It's pay what feels good. It's an exchange of value between you and us. We're keeping conventional podcast advertising totally out of this. And here's how Pay What Feels Good works. We give you this episode because it feels good to do so. And you consider, honestly, what number of dollars this episode is genuinely worth to you. I do not care if that's $3, $1,000, or literally $0 and a heart emoji, as long as that trade genuinely makes your day better. And the energy there is the entire point. That is what we're building our business on. No advertisers, no selling your attention, just you and us, trading value in a way that builds us both up. So whatever the number, when you're done listening, head to empoweredhumanacademy.com and hit the Pay What Feels Good button. We use this policy across all of our company's work, and I'm really excited to bring it here to the world of podcasts. This is us voting for the world that we want to see. Thank you for being here.